Hello! Today we are expanding the verified program to include Steam Machine and Steam Frame, both of which are shipping this summer. That's right, in what seemed to be a kind of boring update to their verified program, Valve has just dropped the fact that the Steam Frame and Steam Machine are both shipping this summer. Now, that's not exactly a release date yet. It doesn't narrow it down to a specific day, but it is a huge update to what we had previously been given. Remember, the original plan when it was announced was to ship in early 2026, but then the RAM crisis happened, driving up prices, and so Valve had to figure out where was it all going to settle so they could actually set a launch price. Then we were finally updated to be told that the Steam Machine would launch in the second half of 2026, and so getting the update to shipping this summer is actually a lot more information than we had previously, although that's still not, completely narrowing it down. Now, this is in an update to the verified program where the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame are now included. And that's kind of a big deal. So the Steam Deck, if you're used to that, I actually use one quite a bit. When you look at any game on Steam, it'll tell you if it's verified or not. Now, verified means it will run. Now, how well it runs performance-wise can also be a bit of a question mark, although Valve has been updating their performance tracking metrics for their devices like the Steam Deck, probably in anticipation of expanding support for this kind of feature with the Steam Machine and Steam Frame. I had kind of mixed feelings about the initial implementation with Steam Deck, but I'm hoping that with actual more performance metrics involved, we could get a better idea of how will things actually run. So anyway, I think this is pretty good. I don't think we get a ton of additional information or anything like that other than that release date here. You can dive into this source if you'd like. But we also have some stuff in the rumor category, which is the GeForce RTX 50 Super Series is back in business? Maybe. This is certainly not official, and it's also coming with news about maybe getting an RTX 5060 Super with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, I saw this posted in a number of places. All of them seem to be sourcing it from this post on Twitter by Megasize GPU. He says, RTX 50 Super is back on track. This time includes 5060 12 gigabytes, or maybe it will have a new name as the 5060 Super. Now, random posts on Twitter, what do we make of them? Well, Megasize GPU has leaked some things accurately in the past, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily like the number one. A lot of people would be looking for, okay, does Copite 7 Kimmy also corroborate this? So if we start to get multiple leakers jumping on this bandwagon, I would start to say, okay, maybe this is happening. But as it is now, I'd say, one source has leaked some things accurately in the past. I would put lots of grains of salt on this. Now let's talk about what does this mean if it's true? Well, in the videocards.com article on this topic, they have a helpful summary chart of what the overall lineup looks like with the rumored Super Series specs in here, because we had already seen a bunch of rumored specs back when we were expecting to get the 50 Super Series in the first half of 2026. But then again, the RAM crisis happened because the whole point of these cards was adding in the 3 gigabyte modules instead of the 2 gigabyte modules on the original 50 Series cards to effectively give a 50% VRAM increase on the same cards. Potentially with maybe a little bit of a clock speed bump to get a little bit of a performance bump, but it seemed to be primarily about VRAM. But then when you get the RAM prices going insane with all of the AI data centers buying up all the supply, well, then it seemed to be the case that the 50 Super Series got canceled, although can you cancel something that was never actually announced? So then if it gets, uncanceled, it was never officially canceled. But this is all the kind of behind the scenes stuff that was probably in development and then got, indefinitely delayed. So maybe the delay is no longer indefinite. Maybe it's coming. Now, the specs for the 5080 Super were rumored to again be the exact same 10,752 CUDA cores as on the original 5080, but with the VRAM bumped from 16 gigabytes up to 24 gigabytes, which would be really nice. That would also come with a power target increase. Now, the additional VRAM does use additional energy, but if it also just gave a little bit more to the core and maybe gave it a little clock speed bump, if they just make it 5% faster or something like that, that's just like an additional selling point. The 5070 Ti Super was rumored to also be matching the core count of the 5070 Ti, in this case with 8,960, and then jumping up from the 16 gigabytes of VRAM up to the 24 gigabytes of VRAM. And again, TGP bump from 300 to 350 watts. Now, the original Super lineup was not rumored to have a 5060 class card, but that's included in this leak, saying that it will include a 5060 12 gigabyte this time around. Maybe that would be called a 5060 Super. So while he's not leaking the core count or anything like that, if he's calling it a 5060 12 gigabyte, you would assume that it would follow the same pattern of having the same number of CUDA cores, so that would be 3,840. And then again, you get the 50% VRAM increase because each 2 gigabyte module gets replaced with a 3 gigabyte module, and so it jumps from 8 up to 12. And he's not leaking any power targets, but the original was at 145. So with 4 gigabytes more, memory to power, you would expect that to jump up a little bit. I don't know, 160, 170, somewhere around there maybe. Again, also depends on if they gave it a little bit of a clock speed bump and a little bit more power. You never know. So that's the rumor. Like I said, though, this is just a rumor from one source that has got things correct in the past. Now, other thoughts on this topic. So what if we buy it? What if we buy that this is happening? Well, in some sense, that could be a good thing because, hey, it's nice to get more VRAM on these cards. But then, okay, what are the negatives? Well, okay, VRAM is still expensive as far as I know. So does this mean that NVIDIA knows that suddenly RAM prices are going to drop and everything's going to be more affordable? Or does it mean that they just charge a lot for these cards? I would lean more towards that latter one. Also, what does it mean about getting the 6000 series? Because if we were going to maybe be getting the 6000 series early next year, but now we would be seeing the 50 series Super cards coming out, well, I think the soonest these could come out is a few months from now, if it was even happening. So if that's pushing out towards, the end of 2026, then I don't think you're going to see a 6000 series launched at the beginning of 2027. I think it would be at the earliest the end of 2027 if they try to squeeze in a Super series here. So yeah, I think that's another thing that this could mean. If they're wanting to delay the 6000 series to beyond where we would have originally expected it, this could be filling the gap. But again, at what price, given the VRAM targets? Now, maybe this all does happen. Maybe the prices actually come in reasonable and we're all super happy. I don't know. I'm just, giving some reasonable thoughts based on the what if scenario, based on what we currently know about the market and VRAM pricing. Now, speaking of pricing on things, if you're feeling like only people who can afford a Ferrari can afford a PC these days, well, HP and Ferrari have the solution for you. You should just buy a Ferrari PC. So for $5,599, you can get the HP and Ferrari AI PC. It's a laptop that is limited to 4,999 units. Now, it feels like a real missed opportunity here to price it at 5,599 when there are 4,999 units being made. Apparently, each of them is individually numbered. So why wouldn't you price it at 4,999 or make 5,599 units? It just feels like that's a missed opportunity for like the marketing thing there. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't really have any interest in this, but maybe somebody with a Ferrari wants a matching PC to go with their Ferrari and has an extra $6,000 lying around to get one. So interesting. It's apparently launching in the US on June 12th. And apparently with some availability in the UK, Switzerland, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Japan, and Australia. Now, you can see that a lot of the Ferrari design stuff is happening on the bottom of the PC anyway, which means that when you're actually using the laptop in its standard configuration, it just looks like a red HP laptop with a Ferrari sticker put on it. And did you know that you could actually buy a Ferrari sticker and put it on a less expensive laptop? I don't know, just a thought. But anyway, if you have a Ferrari, then this is probably affordable for you. So I guess awesome. They've got a target market. Are there really 4,999 people with Ferraris who want a matching Ferrari laptop? I don't know. Or maybe there's people who wish they had a Ferrari car and the PC's cheaper. I don't know. Maybe it's a cheaper way to get a Ferrari. Now, as far as the specs in it, it looks like we've got an Intel Core Ultra X7 358H processor with an Intel Arc B390 graphics, which would give you up to 180 TOPS of total AI compute. And looks like 64 gigabytes of memory. A 14-inch 3K BrightView Tandem OLED Plus touchscreen with up to 700 nits brightness and 120 hertz refresh rate. Yeah, nothing about those specs scream like almost $6,000 PC to me, but it does have a cool looking bottom cooler thingy with the Ferrari logo on it. So, if your Ferrari matches this PC, you might want to think about getting this as an accessory. I mean, it's an option. Anyway, how about we talk a little bit more about the news I reported on yesterday with the drama around, so is FSR 4.1 coming to the RDNA 3.5 APUs? I mean, we have like some super powerful APUs there. Like Strix Halo is very powerful for gaming, but like, if it doesn't have FSR 4.1, that's going to be a big downside. And then there's less powerful than Strix Halo, but still pretty powerful gaming stuff out there, like the ROG Ally X, things like that, where you could run FSR 4.1. At least you can run the, Int 8, well, I guess it's not FSR 4.1 with the Int 8 version, but the Int 8 leaked version can run with at least some kind of performance boost, right? I think there would be a lot of users who would want the option to use it. And then we had some articles yesterday implying that it might not be coming. But again, the key detail was it wasn't confirmed as not coming to RDNA 3.5. It was left open as no final decision had been made. But AMD's VP David McAfee, I might maybe mispronouncing it again, had implied that they were leaning towards no. So this story kind of blew up, and so some outlets have reached out for additional comment, including Tom's Guide. So at Tom's Guide, they have asked for more information. Now, I've seen some headlines at some websites reporting on this as if it was AMD's Jack Quinn, who had been reached out to and given further comments. That was apparently an error that was in this original reported article, but has now been corrected. So if you've seen anybody quoting Jack Quinn on this issue, those were misattributed to him. It was actually asking David McAfee again, who was one of the people who had made the original comment in the first place. Now, so as far as what is his additional information? So Tom's Guide, to get to the bottom of this, says that they put the question to David McAfee, corporate VP and general manager of client, and his answer was an interesting one. So if we scroll down far enough, we will eventually get to the answer. So he starts talking about the company's philosophy on RDNA 4, on FSR 4, on non-RDNA 4 products. And he says, we want to make sure the experience and the quality is right, so having a sufficient amount of compute within that product, whether it's a GPU or an APU or whatever, to ensure that you know the performance benefit. So he's talking about making sure that there's enough performance in the device for it to be a good experience. So in other words, that's one of the reasons they might not allow it on RDNA 3.5 APUs. If they don't feel like it provides enough of a performance boost because it's hard for it to run the FSR 4.1 algorithm, then, or inference, I guess maybe not an algorithm since AI stuff, whatever. Anyway, the point is it might not perform well. Anyway. So he then says, I guess you'd call it quality of service, so that you're always delivering frames within an appropriate frame time. All of those boxes have to be checked so that we're delivering a quality experience that gamers are going to be happy with and advancing the experience that they get through the use of the product. So again, he's talking about how they're trying to decide if it would really make sense to offer that on RDNA 3.5 APUs, because it's implying, if it's not giving you enough of a frame rate boost, it might not be worth offering that for users. So he's saying the team are reading the comments and reviews about what we announced, and there is a lot of interest in taking FSR 4.1 to other parts of the market. These first steps in our roadmap were very important as we brought it to other architectures. So notice that nowhere here is he saying yes or no, which is consistent with the AMD representatives who have spoken on this so far, saying that no decision has actually been made yet, and they're not ready to announce anything as big as a yes or a no. So then he says, the author of the Tom's Guide thing says, okay, so they asked, can I take your answer as it's coming then? So is it coming? Give me a yes or a no. And so then AMD says, I did not say it's coming. I said there is a high quality bar that we care about a great deal. And as we look at other places to apply our FSR technology, the critical factor is ensuring that the quality and the gaming experience is uncompromised. So in other words, he won't be pinned down with a yes or a no. Now, the author of this article is saying that his personal take is that it's only a matter of time, that it will come. Now, I'll say that all of these comments, that we're getting from AMD really sound like justifications for why it might not come, because they're talking about, we really want to make sure it actually offers a good performance level before we offer that to people. And, I think it could be a little bit of a complicated situation, because it's very possible that the weakest of the RDNA 3.5 APUs might not make sense for using this. Whereas something like Strix Halo, I'm certain could have the power to make it work. And something like an ROG, Xbox Ally X, I think it could be good enough to have the option. It might not give you as much of a performance boost as FSR 3, but if you use it as an aggressive enough setting, you might get enough of a performance boost. And even at a more aggressive upscale, it might still look better than FSR 3 on a less aggressive upscale, just because of how much better it looks. So again, what I'm hearing here is a lot of reasons why it might not come to RDNA 3.5. So I'm not as confident as this article is saying, their personal take is it's only a matter of time. But I will say that my personal take, same as I said yesterday, is that I think they absolutely should make the option available, because I think that some RDNA 3.5 APUs are powerful enough to make it work. And I think at least in specific games for specific people, it would be preferable to using FSR 3. And I think having the option is only a good thing. I would say that from AMD's perspective, if they're worried that people are going to get a bad experience with it, then when you enable it in the graphics driver override, maybe on those devices, it should pop up a warning that maybe your device might not be powerful enough for this to give good performance in every game, and to use with caution or something like that. So I think that would be the right way to go about it, is to make the option available, but potentially with some kind of a warning, because I certainly think that some devices would benefit from it in certain situations, and it would be a good thing to offer that support. Anyway, especially seeing how, angry a lot of people seem to be at the implication that they might not bring it. So I think it would certainly also be just a PR win to make sure that that they actually get that. Anyway, in last bit of news, yesterday I talked about how Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis had stirred up more controversy regarding using generative AI in game development, but we are also seeing the game's PC system requirements being posted on the Steam page. Now, that being said, it's the most absolutely basic form of Steam system requirements, so I'm not doing a separate video about it at this time. I imagine maybe closer to release, we might get more details, because we're just seeing minimum and recommended with no resolution frame rate targets or anything like that here. So for the minimum GPU, they're saying a GTX 1070 8GB or 2060 Super, or an AMD RX 5700. Now, I think that if I was going to speculate what sort of performance target that might be, I would guess it's, especially on something like a 1070, I would guess somewhere around 30 FPS, 1080p, maybe with some upscaling, like quality upscaling from 720p at the lower settings, because this is an Unreal Engine 5 game. Now, on the recommended, we're seeing RTX 3080 or RX 6800 XT, which I would associate more with 1080p 60 at least medium settings at native resolution, or probably max settings with some upscaling, and then maybe 1440p at some of the higher settings, but with upscaling, maybe balance level upscaling or something like that, because that would be a kind of a typical performance profile for an Unreal Engine 5 game. But not necessarily what this will indicate. So we'll probably get some more additional details as we get closer. The minimum CPUs are being listed as Intel i5 8600 or Ryzen 5 3600. Whenever I see a Ryzen 5 3600 listed, I'm thinking they're probably thinking along the lines of PlayStation 5 kind of processing power for gaming. And then for the recommended, they're saying i7 9700K or Ryzen 5 5600X. So a bit of a step up from here, but not like a doubling of performance or anything like that. So maybe these would be a more solid 60 FPS, and maybe something like this could see dips at times in more CPU demanding areas. But again, I'm just giving a lot of kind of general thoughts based on what's typical for these kind of requirements and an Unreal Engine 5 game and that kind of thing. All right, that's the news I've got for you guys today. Hopefully you found it useful and or interesting. Are you still excited for the Steam machine and Steam Frame despite what the costs may end up being? Or did you lose interest now that RAM prices went up? And what do you think about the 50 series super cards? Do you think this is real, or is mega-sized GPU wrong this time around? Let me know in the comment sections, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.